In this tutorial, I'll teach you how to use the perspective guides in your digital art application to help you draw in perspective. Not all art applications have these guides, but many do. I'll load the perspective room template. The objects in this room were drawn in a 2-point perspective. The process to enable the perspective guides varies substantially between art applications. Some applications like Corel Painter have a tool for it in the toolbox and a dedicated panel with the properties. Others, like Rebel and Krita, require you to select a guides tool, and perspective is a mode of that. Your art application may let you create a custom keyboard shortcut to show and hide the perspective guides. If so, that would make it much easier to enable and disable. Once activated, some perspective guides may appear on your canvas. If not, then you may need to click a few times on the canvas to place the vanishing points. Before placing any guides, zoom out quite a bit to create a lot of space around your canvas. You'll need to do this so you can see the vanishing points. If the vanishing points are not already there, then click outside the canvas to the left and right and keep the points level to each other by holding Shift. A final point may need to be placed in the center as well. You can have this off to one side to shift the perspective, but we'll just keep it centered. At this point, several guides should appear on the canvas. If it's hard for you to see the guides, you can usually change the guide color and opacity. This setting might be in the properties or panel for the perspective guides, or it might be hidden in the preferences. The 2-point perspective preset is often the default. 2-point has 2 vanishing points on either side, represented by circles. The line connecting them is the horizon line. This is your eye level as the observer of the painting. You can raise or lower the horizon line to make objects appear shorter or taller than the observer. And you can change the angle at which the observer is viewing the painting. There may also be one or more diagonal guidelines that converge at the vanishing points on the horizon line. Some perspective guide tools even have a vertical line to help with vertical alignments. If I hover near the lines I drew to create this room, you can see how they align with the guides. If you're following along with me, your guides may not match the perspective in this template. I'll show you how to align your guides with my template in just a bit. If I zoom in a bit, hide my UI, and draw, paint, erase, or blend, you can see how my strokes snap to these guides. If your strokes aren't snapping, check to see if you need to enable snapping first. The lines I draw will converge at the vanishing points. If I try to make a line that is at a different angle, I cannot. If your perspective guides create a perspective grid, that is very helpful for drawing in proportion as well as in perspective. As you can see, I can draw the same sized tile on the ground whether it's in the foreground or background. The background tile is visually smaller, but it's the same size if you factor in perspective. As objects move into the distance, they get smaller and closer together until they eventually vanish. And as objects move closer toward you, they get bigger and more spaced apart. A scene can have multiple vanishing points. Most commonly, there are 1, 2, or 3 vanishing points in a scene, but some scenes may require more than that. The vanishing points can be moved horizontally or vertically to change the perspective. Typically, you'll want the horizon line to be straight, and the vanishing point should be spaced far enough apart to avoid causing perspective distortion. Once you have set the vanishing points, you'll want to avoid moving them once you begin drawing. Otherwise, your perspective will become misaligned. It is possible to realign the guides to match the perspective in a scene. Just align the horizon first, then each vanishing point. In Corel Painter, you can rotate the guides, which makes it easy to set a guide on a line in your scene, then rotate the guide to align with it. This automatically aligns the vanishing point. It may take a little tweaking to get it just right. You can test the accuracy by drawing some test lines to see if they match the lines in the scene. Your art application might have a perspective panel that has controls to customize the guides. You might be able to change the density of the intermediate guides, lock the guides, and most importantly, change the quantity of perspective points. However, in the case of Krita, you need to select a different type of guide mode to switch between 1 and 2-point perspectives. Let's switch to the perspective modes template and briefly look at the 1 and 3-point perspective modes. 1 point gives you a single vanishing point, and all of the lines you draw will converge there. You're probably familiar with this from drawing simple train tracks or roads. It can be difficult to precisely place this point if the icon is too large, so you may need to zoom in quite a bit. Let's try the 3-point mode. I'll make sort of an upside-down triangle layout, with all of the vanishing points far outside of the canvas to prevent distortion. Next, I'll draw a tall cube shape that looks like a skyscraper viewed from above. This is a bird's eye view. I could also invert the vanishing points and draw a skyscraper viewed from below. This is a worm's eye view. If you're having difficulty drawing on the correct guide, try drawing either toward or away from the vanishing point. If you're using Krita, then you can have multiple perspective guides on your canvas at once. As you can see, I can combine 1- and 2-point perspectives. Unfortunately, most other art applications will reset the guides if you switch to a different perspective point mode. So if I toggle to the 3 points mode in Rebelle, I will need to reposition the guides. Corel Painter will allow you to save perspective guide presets, so you can preserve the guides while switching modes if you're using that application. If you want to stop drawing in perspective, there are a couple of ways to do that. First, you can disable the perspective guides. You can use that same shortcut you used to activate it. Corel Painter allows you to hide the perspective guides while keeping them active, so don't mistake that for disabling them. And second, your art application might have a toggle shortcut or a mode that allows you to draw freehand while keeping the perspective lines visible. In Corel Painter, there is a checkbox to enable and disable snapping. You can use a keyboard shortcut to invoke this as well. In Krita, you can hold V to temporarily enable straight line drawing mode. This will allow you to draw straight lines at any angle. You can also disable snapping with Ctrl-Shift-L. Now I can draw freeform shapes. Rebelle has a freehand mode that will let you draw more loosely while still being guided toward the vanishing point. In many cases, the most recent position and properties of the perspective guides are saved with each individual artwork file, but only if you choose to save it in the native file format of your application. If you save as any other format, you might lose your guides. This is why it's nice that Corel Painter allows you to save perspective presets. But the downside to that is if you were to reinstall Painter, those guide presets would be lost. If you happen to be using Windows 10 or 11, you can activate crosshairs that surround your cursor. If your perspective guides tool does not already have guides like this, these crosshairs can be useful to help you align the horizontal points of objects when drawing in perspective. As you can see, it's much easier to avoid overdrawing the parallel line of this rectangle when I can preview the vertical alignment. These crosshairs can be useful for drawing freehand as well. I'll link you to a reference video if you'd like to learn how to enable these. That covers the basics of using perspective guides in digital art. There's a lot more to learn about putting them to use for drawing, so check out my more advanced tutorials if you're interested in that.